Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video we're going to be going over Sumabato SB38. It was a B tier event that happened this weekend and it got a little bit overshadowed because you did have Battle of BC happening, but this event was still incredibly stacked and pretty much every Japanese player that wasn't at Battle of BC was at this one. In 13th place you had, and I'm going to butcher these next two names, but I think it's Yuame and Maikai. I could be wrong. You also had Ike and SSSR. In 9th place you had Rare Kusu, Level 1 Dora Migi and Agoski. In 7th place you had Osimo and Sabaten. In 5th place, you had Showers and Kuroponzu. In 4th place, you had Komei. In 3rd place, Sigma. 2nd place, Snow. And winning the whole thing was actually H4. And the first two players I'm going to take a look at are going to be Yuame and Maikai. Again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names, but they both played Almar, and they both ended up getting 13th with a ridiculous losers runs. You had Maikai getting his most notable win over Alice, and you had Yuame getting his most notable win over Shiryuki, which are two really big ones. Those are both players that we've seen at the top level of the Japanese scene, so huge shouts to those guys. Almar is an incredibly common character in Japan, and it's a bit weird because it feels like everywhere else in the world, we're slowly seeing Almar die out. You know, you have a little bit of representation in America with Candle and then DeBuzz from time to time doing wild events, as well as some other ones. I think Army's another example. But in Europe, Almar doesn't exist. That's like a commonly known problem about Europe, is that they get rocked by Almar because one of them just doesn't exist there. I don't know of any super notable Mexican Almars, but I could just be unaware. Same thing with Australia and Canada. So I think Almar in Japan, though, there's like 30 of them. There are so many Almar players. You're also seeing Shuton using the character a lot more. So clearly, they know something about Almar that we don't. But the Japanese meta, it's a little bit different than ours as well. There's some characters that kind of correlate. I'd say the name one being Snake. There's a ton of Snakes. You had Ike getting 13th place here as well, beating Kananabe, by the way. So shout out to Ike. But Snake, I'd say, is probably the biggest correlation. But Japan, you have like 30 min-mins. Everywhere else, not as much min-mins. So many Almars, a couple Rob players, a couple Roy players here and there. But it's definitely different than the American meta. And I think obviously that biggest difference is going to be, as I said, those min-min and the Almar players, because they are super abundant. You also had another Almar player performing pretty well at this event. That's going to be Agoski with a 9th place for him. He was able to beat Terakatori, Suna, and actually Yuame in the Ditto, so that's a pretty big deal. He did unfortunately have to run into Osimo in the loser side of bracket, so not a great draw there, but again, I already talked about this, so I won't ramble on a little more. Almar, incredibly prevalent character in Japan. Also, another character that's really abundant in Japan that I just forgot to mention is Game & Watch, but also Game & Watch is kind of just prevalent everywhere because that character is broken, but I think especially prevalent in Japan. I also want to talk about Rare Kusu, who ended up getting a 9th place from them. Pretty nice losers ones. They were able to beat Rocky, Gorika, Sumo Suto, and SSSR before falling to Showers in a Game 5 set. They lost to Shiryuki in winners, by the way. And their character combination, at least to my knowledge, is going to be Falco and Donkey Kong. And I want to talk about Donkey Kong in the meta because I think this is a character that is going to have a huge resurgence. Not as a solo mate. I don't think solo mating Donkey Kong is something that's going to be super viable because the character still does have a couple fairly unwinnable matchups and he's overall not amazing, but I think Donkey Kong as a counter pick is something that is going to become extremely viable because of his advantage state. His advantage state is so incredibly good, and while his disadvantage state is bad, against common characters in Ultimate right now, you're still taking 80%, 90% from one neutral interaction if you lose it. Maybe with Donkey Kong you're getting up to 120, so you know what? It sucks, but now you have Rage, you're on PS2 because people are letting you go there a lot for some reason, and now you get to ding dong people at 60%. I think Donkey Kong is going to have a huge part in the meta, at least again in the counter picking aspect. Solo mating him, I still think you're going to struggle, but as a counter pick character, I think he's going to have a lot of success, kind of in the same aspects of Kazuya, where it's like, yeah, there's certain stages where I could just go Donkey Kong and do really well because his advantage, like I could say it 30 times over, is amazing. So shouts to Rare Kusu. I love players that are using co-mains right now. Again, I think co-maining is the future of this game, if you can't tell. So Donkey Kong, keep that on your radar because that's a character you're going to be seeing a lot more. You also had two Rob players getting top 8 at this tournament in Saboten and Kuroponzo. Now, Kuroponzo, I'm pretty sure was solo Rob, whereas you had Saboten using a bit of Roy as well, though I do think it was still mainly Rob from them, and you had a couple good upsets for both those players. I think the biggest one between the two of them is going to be Kuroponzo getting a massive win over Kananabe. Kananabe has been doing insanely well as of late. I'd say he's probably the second best Fox in Japan. I'd say the third best Fox in the world, though there are a couple people that I think could slot into that conversation. Kananabe is obviously ridiculous. You also had Kuroponzo getting wins over Showers, and then in the lower setup bracket is where you saw Saboten having his most success getting wins on Ike and Level 1, as well as a couple other players for both those guys. But Rob, I talked about common characters in Japan. Rob's a character that I feel like we kind of had a little bit of a period where we didn't see as much of them, specifically after Zachary dropped the character. I feel like I didn't hear any Japanese Robs, but now you're seeing the character come back a little bit. You also had SSSR doing well at this event, so Rob's definitely a character that's becoming more and more prevalent in Japan, and I think it's going to continue staying that way because Rob is kind of broken. We also have to talk about the big underperformance of this event of Osimo. Now, he only got 7th place, so it wasn't actually that big of an underperformance, but considering he was the first seed, it is a pretty big deal. And he's someone that I would have expected to win this event. He was able to get wins on Ike still, as well as in the lowers bracket. He was able to get wins on a Goski, but once he got into top 8, he was eliminated by Kome, who had a crazy losers run that we'll get to in a second, and Sigma in the winner setter bracket. So, a rough tournament for Osimo. Is he going to bounce back? I mean, probably. This guy is ridiculous. I'd still regard him as a top 20 player in the world, the best Ryu right now by far. So it's a rough tournament for Osimo, but I don't think it's one that's going to hurt his season too much. But let's actually talk about that losers run of Kome because it is ridiculous. He loses before you even get into the second phase of bracket, and he just pops off. He beat in a row Senra, Futari no Kamiya, Karage, Maikai or Mikey, and Origami to make top 8. So he's beaten all of those players, some of the biggest players of the entire tournament. A lot of people there projected to get top 8, and he was able to beat them. And then he beat Osimo immediately after, and then Kuru Ponzu before falling to snow. This is such a strong run from Kome, and he's one of those players where sometimes he just pops off insanely hard. You kind of see this, he loses fairly early on, and then in the losers bracket, he just decides to become that guy. I mean, Shulk is a character you can definitely do that with. Couple good matchups along the way for him as well, and I think Shulk's a character that is fairly interesting right now in the meta because they keep getting worse and worse for me, but just because Shulk is getting worse on a tier list, it doesn't mean he's actually getting worse as a character. He's still getting better. I just have been seeing a little bit more results from other characters, but we kind of always have to remember Shulk as one of those broken top tiers because he has access to Minato, and any character that has access to Minato can do anything. So shouts to Kome for this run. You also had 2 Toon Link players having a lot of success at this tournament, with level 1 getting a 9th place and Sigma actually getting 3rd place, beating Snow, who ended up getting 2nd. And Osimo, as well as a couple other players. Osimo is obviously going to be the biggest win on this list because Osimo is like a top 30 player in the world. Along the way, Sigma also beat Futari and Saboten, so that's pretty ridiculous for him. You had level 1 getting wins on Gorika and Shiryuki as well. So the Toon Link players, they cleaned up really well at this tournament. And Toon Link's a bit of a character that's a kind of odd for me because I don't really think he's that good, but Japan kind of disagrees with me because you have these insane results from both of these guys. I'd say they're probably your top 2 Toon Links in the world right now, though there are some other good ones, like you have Jojo Dahobu, who's very good. Aang's another one that comes to mind. So Toon Link's a character that definitely has representation, but Japan, the 2 Japanese Toon Links in Sigma and level 1, they have just been doing so well as of late that I definitely think they are top 2. And I will say, I thought level 1 had that title of best Toon Link for a little bit, but after this run from Sigma, I'm having my doubts, and Sigma may be staying that Toon Link king because he is just insane with this character. Again, beating Osimo is such an incredible feat. In second place, you had Snow, who's able to beat Sumo Suto and Dora Migi to be able to make top 8. And once they were in top 8, they did lose to Sigma, but in the losers bracket, they were able to beat Showers, who got 5th at this tournament with mainly Inkling, by the way, so shout to Showers, as well as Kome and Sigma in the run back before losing to H4. And Mario, another character we're seeing have a kind of a renaissance right now in this game. I think the biggest 2 that come to my mind is Ice Climbers and Mario, just when you consider how well they were doing right when we got out of the COVID era. These characters kind of didn't exist, and now all of a sudden, there's like 30 of them running around. You have Kurama, Dark Wizzy, now, so many Mario players having a lot of success, and Snow is just another one of the best Marios in the world, of course. I mean, to get 2nd at a tournament like this, you kind of have to be of that caliber. I would still give now the title of best Mario in Japan, and then Kurama the title of best Mario in the world, but that's definitely a title that can be stolen away, especially if Snow keeps putting up results like this, so he should be super happy with this run. But the final player that I'm going to talk about, and the person that I made this video for just straight up, is going to be H4. Because H4, if you don't know who they are an American Pikachu player that I think moved to Japan, or at least visiting there for a little bit. And they had just an insane run. They were able to beat Jogabu, Suna, and level 1. Jogabu is already an insanely big upside. I think he was the 2nd seed at this tournament, and that's just to get into top 8, where they were able to beat Kuru Ponzu and Sigma, as well as Snow. Did not drop a set, and they won something with Pikachu. Pikachu is a character that wins literally nothing. Like, this is the biggest event that Pikachu has won since I think ESAM won Glitch 8.5, which is so long ago. And with this result, you're probably going to give H4 the title of Best American Pikachu because ESAM, unfortunately, doesn't have a ton of results right now. And while it still give Best Pikachu title to Shining Work because he obviously has that ridiculous run at Collision, this from H4 is insanely impressive. And it lets me push my Pikachu propaganda. This character is still top 5. The amount of stuff that you're able to do to people is just unreal. His camping game's really good. He doesn't have a disadvantage. He hits you and kills you in one hit. But H4 played out of this mind this tournament. Really hope we can see repeats from this. We've seen greatness from him before. This is just another example of it, and I'm just incredibly happy for him. And I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed sports. Been absolutely unreal lately. And if there's a player that I left out, please let me know down below. I know we didn't talk about a ton of runs today, but I kind of just wanted to talk about H4's run because it was really good from him. And again, I think Pikachu is an incredible character that doesn't get a ton of results. So whenever they do get results, I got to make the most of it. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.